Hey, welcome back, Solar Warriors. And if you're new here, I want to welcome you into the family. Thank you for giving us the only non-renewable resource you've got. That, of course, is your time. I'm going to ask you to pay attention. Hopefully, you'll do that throughout the duration of this interview. It is an excellent one. And if this is your first time here, hopefully, you will choose to subscribe to the show. It's the only way that you will get notified each and every week, twice a week, when we record and release episodes just like this one, leaders on the front lines of the clean energy transition, helping you level up your career or build a business like today's entrepreneur, Mike Vergona. Mike is one of the top leaders in the Florida solar industry. I would argue that he's one of the top leaders in the solar industry here in the United States. He's been in the industry for more than a decade, and I've known him since I was slinging panels for Trina back in the early teens living in South Florida. And he was then working for his father at another company there in South Florida. Now he's running one of the top solar companies that is under his own brand, Urban Solar. We're going to hear more about the intention and the heart that goes into building a business that serves more than just your own interests, that serves your community, your stakeholders, your team members, and how the Florida solar industry, one of the hottest in the U.S., is evolving in these tepid waters in this tepid market that is 2024. For now, let's get ready to tune up your skills, Solar Warrior, as we tune into another powerful conversation here on Suncast. As you think about how you describe your business, a way that I often try to get folks to give me a sense of how they think about the problems they're solving is, when you are hanging out in South Florida with your family at a Christmas dinner somewhere not related to the solar industry, and somebody asks you, what do you do? How do you describe the problem that you're trying to solve?
That's a great question. I've spent a lot of time giving a really boring answer, which was I install solar on homes and businesses. And people always follow up with like solar electric, solar panels. And I say, yes. And then they say, cool. That's usually about it.
Yeah.
But spending the last 10 years, and we're just celebrating our 10-year anniversary as a business, spending the last 10 years, I've been thinking a lot about why I started. And one of the big reasons behind starting was at the time, the concept, which was not yet really realized, of grid parity, meaning the cost of solar energy versus the cost of grid energy, and them finally meeting, and solar going below the cost of grid energy. And I look back on the big why behind why I started, and it was really that for that reason, right? It was, wow, this makes sense. It makes sense. Like you can't argue with something that's lower price. Like if you go online and you search for a washing machine and you can buy one for $100 less and it's the same model, you buy that one because it's lower price. So it's very, it was just it just clicked with me. And I've just been meditating on that a lot the last couple of months.
Let's role play here for a minute then. If you reimagine the way that you answer this, so that the way that you answer it both at a Christmas party and a Rotary Club meeting or at church are all the same, think of that grid parity hook. And I'll ask you again, Mike, what is it that you're about? I'll ask the most boring, banal question, which is, what do you do? And your answer is?
I drive electricity costs down to zero using renewable energy.
Nice. I like that you use the word grid parity, and I'm going to play off that for a minute because I think that storytelling is about getting people to the point where they ask you, tell me more, right? Mm-hmm. Either through their eyes, their body language, or their direct words. Oh, and then what, right? So I love what you just said, and I think that that's a great answer. I think that it could be complemented with the words grid parity by saying something along the lines of, how familiar are you with the terminology grid parity? Because answering a question with a question is a great way to engage a conversation, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to know where they're at in their education levels. So if you start with, what do you do? Well, how familiar are you with the concept of grid parity, right? And then that leads you into, if they say, well, not that much, you can say, well, and you can answer the same way you just did. And then you go on to explain what grid parity means. And you can see how that opens the conversation up just another dimension bigger, right?
I love that.
Fantastic. So in the quest to establish a business that would help your neighborhood, your local community achieve grid parity, you created a business called Urban Solar. Would you introduce the rest of us to Urban Solar through that lens?
Absolutely. Yeah. Urban Solar is a South Florida based solar company. And our main purpose is to promote the fact that solar energy is cheaper than the grid. That's what we do. And our job is to drive down the costs of implementing that for homeowners and business owners. And we have a team of 35 people here in Boca Raton. And we're mainly engaged in operations and installation.
Yeah.
We have a pretty decent sized direct sales team, but for the most part, we're fulfilling contracts for other sales organizations and in the commercial and residential space. And we are focused primarily on customer service and on delivering a clean product to our end user and maintaining that over the course of the lifetime of the system.
Sweet. Well, how you've just described it tells me a lot about some of the specific business choices you've made. I'm curious as well, the market dynamic, the environment in which you operate. How competitive is the South Florida solar market? How many companies are there or even were there when you started Urban?
It's interesting that you said were there, right? That's an industry guy question right there, right? Because there's a lot going on in the industry right now. And just to start with how many were there, I can tell you that in the course of the last 1 to 2 years in Florida, I've seen more companies close their doors than I've ever thought I would see. And some big names too. ADT Solar is one of them. A lot of other names ADT chose to close their doors and they're kind of continuing on a different path, but a lot of guys kind of went a different route, unfortunately. And so the competition right now in the industry is kind of tight. The industry itself is experiencing we're kind of in a bit of a downturn. I would say we're right there at the bottom, on our way headed back up. And competition is tight, which is leading to a really exciting and interesting opportunity to make friends in the industry. Mm-hmm. I've never spoken to more leaders in the industry than I have in the last year. And it's people that are just reaching out that are seeing, hey, we're still here just like you are. We've never spoken before.
Yeah.
What's up? How's it going? How can we work together?
Become friends with Darren Golden?
I've been friends with Darren. Darren's a great guy. We actually came up together in the industry. Funny enough, we met at our contractor licensing exam. That's how far back that goes.
That's super cool. And to Darren's credit, he's being more of a promoter of his business than you. He's been on the show now some 2 or 3 years back.
Okay. Well, he's got me. Yeah, no, great guy.
I think that might be the one thing he's got on you, Mike.
Yep. There you go. No, I mean, guys like him are the ones that are still around, right? The guys that we all kind of started around the same time, and we're running honest companies and we really care about quality. We almost care about quality so much so that him and I would probably get into a battle about installation practices, installation methods, what's best, what's crap. And funny enough, our standards are both so high that either one would probably be perfectly fine. But it's guys like that are surviving, and you just see there's a lot of turbulence going on right now. Just a lot of turbulence.
Indeed there is.
Yeah.
And would you say there are, back when you started a decade ago, congratulations on your 10-year anniversary, how many companies were in the area? And I knew of like AGT, like there were a handful of roofing companies that didn't seem to me like there were a ton of solar companies in South Florida because there just wasn't a big market.
Yeah, there were not. I mean, we used to laugh about the fact that most projects that happened in South Florida, we would hear about them in some way. They would, whether we were awarded the project or not, we'd kind of hear about it because it was such a small community. And at that time, I feel like there was less than 100 companies in the entire state. And that was 10 years ago. There was no home improvement financing for solar. And every customer was a cash customer. So it was a very unique buyer that was going for solar, and the prices were way higher too. Versus today, I think there was over 400 companies in Florida that are doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that overall, there's over 1,000 companies that are in the solar space in some way, shape, or form in the industry in Florida.
What do you think when you think back to the last 10 years? I think that timing is everything. And there are those who would say that you probably started too early. And there are companies that started way sooner than you who well and truly did start too early. What needed to be true over the last 10 years for your business to succeed?
We had to be adaptable, nimble, open-minded, and keep our ear to the ground. We had to be, we really had to make sure that our ego was always in check. And that we weren't going after something just because, a lot of times I think as a business owner, you make a decision to do something and then we don't feel like we can veer off course from doing that because we made the decision, and we are more afraid of looking inconsistent or looking like we're, somebody who changes their mind. We're more afraid of that than we are of making the right decision that we feel is right in our gut, or maybe it's right on paper or in the industry. And I think that that's something that not having that restriction sort of already built in, that was what absolutely needed to be true because of how many times the industry changed. I mean, it changed in so many different ways.
Yeah. And is there anything structurally about the industry that over the last 10 years has truly enabled your business growth and maybe even both external and internal levers that allowed you to thrive and become a top 20 company?
Home improvement financing changed the industry when it first came around. The first financing that came around was PACE, and then some other not so great loans. And PACE is the property assessed clean energy financing that allows you to repay for your home improvement project through your property taxes, which is very interesting.
Right.
Really very interesting. But the entrance of Dividend, Mosaic, GoodLeap, and a couple of the others, Sonova, and a couple of the others coming into the marketplace and offering creative financing just made the conversation with the homeowner different. Right. And just focusing on residential, which we do residential and commercial, but just focusing on residential, it made the conversation with the homeowner different because they don't have to come up with all the cash. It's more of a conversation of, it's more, hey, your average bill is 300 and I can get you solar on your roof that'll offset your whole bill and it'll cost you $260 per month, fixed rate, right? So you don't have to worry about FPL increasing their rate and all that stuff. You're going to stay right here for 25 years. That for sure was a game changer. No question.
Right.
No question. I would say when you've been in the industry for 10 years, like I have, like you have, and you started out, back in those times, you really get you can really understand how important technological improvements have been on the industry. And specifically what I mean is, just one example is design software. So when I first started, we were redrawing a roof in CorelDRAW and getting a scale and having to actually draw the module on the roof. And it was a very careful, tedious process. And it took forever. It took, a couple of days to get a quote through. And now with financing kind of accelerating, or actually I would say over the course of the last 10 years with financing accelerating the sale process, the companies like Aurora and Solo and all these other companies that not only make the design process so much easier, but they make a construction ready project actually real, right? So you get to the home with the equipment after the whole process and you can actually build what was designed, which is amazing. So it's less changes for the homeowner, less conversation and back and forth for the homeowner because homeowners are already a little bit skeptical, right? And business owners are skeptical. They're like, hey, it makes sense, but is this actually going to work? Right? So every time you go to them and tell them that what you did on the front end has to change, they lose a little bit of that confidence. So our goal is to try and minimize those conversations as much as we can by doing all of the work on the front end. And so technology has enabled us to do that. And it's enabled us to get to customers faster where we don't have to wait 5
Yeah.
days to do a commercial proposal. We can do it in a day. And it could be
Yeah.
it could be a bankable proposal too.
Right.
It's got all the components and parts and pieces that you need to make an actual informed decision.
I've said often, well, first of all, I completely agree on the ability to accelerate in the market. I was using TurboCAD to do my original drawings back in 2006. And that was a step up from when we were literally building. I don't think I've told you this, but we were originally, when I started my solar company, my business partner was quite a bit older. He had worked at Philips as an engineer. And I said, how do you know how many panels are going to fit on a roof? And he goes, oh, that's easy. And he pulls up Excel. And I thought he was going to show me a formula. I thought he was going to show me a formula, Mike. And I go, oh, that's really interesting. What are those blue dots? And he goes, it's really simple. Each blue dot is 1 pixel by 1 pixel wide, and that represents 1 foot. And so when you go do your takeoff on the roof, you know the roof is 20 feet. You know that a solar panel is 3 pixels or feet by 5 pixels or feet. And he goes, here's a little standard solar panel that I've gotten designed. It's right here. It's like, and it was just a literal rectangle that he had drawn that was a standard solar panel size, 3 by 5. And he would literally place it over the pixels to see how many solar panels would fit on the roof. That's how we did our original designs.
And copy paste.
Totally, completely.
Oh my God.
When Clean Power Finance acquired the first online design tool and integrated it in, it completely blew my mind and changed the way we did solar in California. And they were rolling it into their finance tool, which was brilliant. And I can attest, having watched Aurora and Helioscope and so many other SaaS companies like that come into the marketplace. Solo as a great example. I know you guys are big solar users. Like the ability to go from what would take, in some cases, days to weeks. You go to the customer, you do a takeoff, which requires you've got a ladder, you've got to get up there manually. And like it was so labor intensive just to do a system, like a site visit, a house visit, then to turn that into proposal, which also required your salesperson to be diligent enough to follow up and do the proposal. I can't tell you how many proposals just languished for days and weeks. Now you've got folks that you support that are out knocking doors, and they're so empowered with this tool like Solo that they can knock on a door and they can deliver not just a design, but a signed contract because they've been able to walk a homeowner through an entire process in under 2 hours. It's brilliant.
And they can even apply for the financing right in there too. The homeowner can do all the disclosures, everything right here. Yeah. It's great. It's great for accelerating the sales process. It lowers the barriers to entry for anybody who wants to get into the solar game, which is a double-edged sword, right? Yeah. You've got guys that have been doing it for 10 years who know the deal, know the game, know what works, what doesn't work, how we should sell, how we shouldn't sell, et cetera. And then you have a lot of guys that aren't in this for 10 years. They might not even be in it for 10 months and they're selling solar. And there's just, I mean, for anybody who's in solar, whether you're residential, commercial, utility, whatever it is, there's nothing you can do about the learning curve. It takes a while to understand the industry. It just takes a while to understand all the parts and pieces of the industry. And it's a little frightening to see how many people are jumping into the sandbox, the solar sandbox, selling customers and doing their thing. So that's where it comes back on us to really do our job to make sure that we quality control everything that comes past us, or comes through us, I should say.
Let's talk a bit about the Florida solar market, at a macro level, because as one of the leaders, you do see a lot of the volume that comes in to the market and install a lot of the solar, certainly in your region. Could you give us a perspective? I'd like to get a sense of the volume that a typical installer like yours can handle, and also some of the dynamics of the Florida solar market that differentiate it from the rest of the U.S. Let's start with volume. Give me a sense of the annual install volume it takes to get into the top 20 in Florida, for example.
Yeah. And above, 1,200, is what puts you up in that top 20 range. So 1,200 per year.
Systems for the year. So like 100 systems a month on average. Systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. And what's the actual annual volume in Florida by comparison to other states? I haven't looked at the latest sort of SEIA results, for example.
Yeah, interestingly, last year was 50,000 installs. And
And do you know in a megawatts or a gigawatts scale what that is?
I don't know that number. The data that I get is typically just permits submitted for, permits approved. So it's just number of jobs.
Yeah. I'm just quickly, thank goodness, uh, Google's AI is just as quick as anything these days. It turns out Florida solar is one of the top in the country with 13.9 megawatts of solar installed in 2023. And according to
Excellent.
SIA,
Excellent.
yeah, according to SIA, it's expected to double over the next 5 years. And it's ranked in the top
Hmm.
five in the nation for what it's worth. For those who are curious about the Florida solar market and the opportunity there, are there any particular dynamics of the Florida market that set it apart from other states, as you are aware, in terms of how the incentives or the customer engagement works differently from other states?
What I would say is that we're actually one of the less advantageous states when it comes to incentives. We really only
Hmm.
have the tax credit available, right, for residential and commercial customers.
Yeah,
But um, but we have an abundance of sunshine. We have sunshine, equal to that of Arizona in a lot of ways,
yeah.
right? Which is a very, very sunny state. And we are the sunshine state, which I hear all the time, right? So why don't we have so much solar? Incentives definitely drive a solar market, but I think sun hours is probably one of the big advantages, and we have pretty great weather here, pretty predictable weather here.
Yeah,
So you can really make the case on that southern facing roof for a homeowner to actually see real life every month savings, especially when coupled with a good financing option, which now leases are becoming much more popular in Florida.
yeah,
A lot of people are turning to leases, which is great, which is awesome. I mean, whatever promotes more installs in Florida is great, and there's nothing wrong with the lease.
yeah. For a while, because of the fact that it was only the tax credit availability, yeah, and the lack of good structured financial products, it was a cash buyer's market. Do you still see a lot of cash
Hmm.
buying homeowners?
Cash buyers represent about 10% of our monthly volume, so we still see a good amount. That's a good amount. I mean, and it's a specific clientele, but we do still see a good amount of cash buyers.
When you think back over the last 10 years, are there any specific milestones of the big business that stand out to you, particularly proud of?
Man, I mean, there's so many things, and it's as I would consider myself a high performer or aspiring high performer, and it's sometimes as an entrepreneur you really don't take a minute to step back and smell the roses and say, wow, we did a great job here. I think I mean,
Hmm.
just being able to be on the list with the other top 20 contractors in Florida is just such a huge milestone for us. um, I think I think being recognized in our reputation and being able to be an Enphase Platinum installer, which we're one of the few in the
Hmm.
state, and being able to just lean on the last 10 years of doing good business for me has been a really big win, a really big win because we've worked hard, which it's funny, it hasn't even felt like it's been work, but we've worked hard at maintaining our relationship, but it just happened because we did the right thing. We were good to people. We weren't out for anything more than, kind of, our purpose. And those kinds of things, people remember. And I just love being able to represent that. I think that's a huge milestone for me looking back kind of over the total of the 10 years.
So we've talked about it being 10 years since you started Urban. I know that you've been in the industry for more than a dozen. Let's talk a bit about the family nature of entrepreneurship. You grew up in South Florida, as I remember. Talk to me about a bit about growing up in South Florida and your family. I'm curious the nature of what work looked like in your family growing up.
Absolutely. So my dad was an electrician from the day that I was born, and
Hmm.
he was the kind of guy that drove his work truck home, and that was his
Yeah.
vehicle. Right. We had the family vehicle, and we had the work truck. And sometimes he picked me up from school in the work truck, which, looking back, I'm like, Dad, come on, but it was really humbling, right? Just a reminder of kind of where you come from.
Yeah.
And so my dad was always entrepreneurial. He did work for some people as he was kind of on his way up, but he started his own business, and he made a great name for himself doing great quality work. My dad was kind of like I think about my dad as like almost he had the Steve Jobs mentality of the electrician. My dad was the guy who he cared about what it looked like inside the wall, and he took there was a
Yeah.
ton of pride in how nice and tight all the wires were in the box. Everything was folded nice and neat. The splices and everything was
Yeah.
real nice and tight. And that really stuck with me. It really stuck with me. And that was where I learned the majority of my knowledge in construction was getting picked up from school and having to go to work with my dad. We'd trim a house out with, I'd put up fans and I'd put in outlets and switches and lights and fixtures and all that stuff. And my dad was the quality control expert who'd come around and say,
Mhm.
you can't do it like this. It's got to be, come on, do it better than like this and make it tighter and that kind of stuff. And I hated it when I was a kid,
That's
as
cool.
most kids do, but it's one of
Of
those
course.
things that looking back at 38, I'm like, man, thank you. That was probably one of the big
Did,
things that I was able to translate into my life
yeah.
today.
Did he allow you to fail?
Somewhat. I think I don't think my dad never held back. My dad
Hmm.
always looked at me from the day that I was born. I'll never forget it. My dad always looked at me and said, I want you to be better than me. And I want you to be better than everybody that's a friend of
Yeah.
yours. And I want you to be better than every one of their friends too.
Yeah.
So my dad just had really high expectations for what he wanted me to
Yeah.
become. And he always held me accountable to that in his special way.
Mm. Yeah. There's commonality there. My dad also was an entrepreneur. And I observed how he treated others that were in some way an apprentice to him on the job compared with myself. And he never wanted me to experience the pain of failure, but he didn't really truly appreciate the proving ground and the fertile soil that failure provides. And
Sure.
if there's one thing that I would have given my dad advice on, if I could have somehow revisited him, it would be, he's not going to cut his finger off, right? Like give him a chance, like teach him to use the tools. And also, I feel like not just dads, but fathers in general we are so preoccupied with completion that we don't appreciate the journey of teaching. And my dad would always, in some ways, take over or be impatient, and he wouldn't let me take the 10 minutes because he could do it in 1 minute. Right.
Yeah.
And and that time scale is important. I see that happening so often in the work environment as well. Right. People will keep a job that they know they can do faster instead of empowering someone. They're taking away that opportunity for growth and learning by keeping it in their own domain. As you were growing your business, were there things like that were hard for you to let go of?
What comes up in my head is, you always hear great leaders surrounding themselves with people way better than them. Right. And as an inexperienced leader, as an inexperienced business owner, you have an aversion to that because of ego or because of whatever fear you might have. And in some ways, you don't allow others to really thrive. And you maybe select people that for your team that are comfortable more than challenging. And I think that right there is I think that speaks a lot to kind of holding things close. Like you hold your protection method close, or you hold your information or your knowledge close because you're afraid that somebody that's maybe better than you would, I don't know what, kick you out of the business. I mean, looking back on it, it's crazy. It's just crazy thinking. And there was a bit of that.
I find more often than not, entrepreneurs are afraid to teach and empower because they're afraid that that person will leave them. You'll get them to a place where they are self-sufficient. And And then you realize, oh, what I'm really afraid of is that I haven't built the kind of culture and company that they would want to work
Exactly.
for, and that they would want to
Exactly.
leave and go start their own thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Well, why do
Well,
people leave, right? Why do people leave a company? And you ask yourself that question very honestly, and you think, and really the answer to that question primarily is pointed back at the business owner. It's
yeah.
primarily pointed back at yourself, and that's where I've spent a lot of my 10 years, is reflecting on those whys. And like, we've had people come and go, and probably way too many come and go, right? And
Mm.
maybe it was bad hiring, but maybe it was bad culture, whatever. But the point is that people leave because they're not getting the growth and development opportunities that they want. They're not being challenged, or the culture is no good, and they decide
Yeah.
that there's greener pastures. And really, all those things, we want to blame. I think business owners want to blame employees for everything, and they, it's hard to find good help and all that kind of stuff. And of course it is, when you have the kind of culture that you have, or when you don't really have anything special. You don't have an internal brand that your employees can connect with. There's no special benefits because maybe you don't want to spend the money on that. I don't know, but
Mm.
I think that it points a lot at, I think it just, like, us as entrepreneurs have to think about how we're fostering that culture and that environment here, because we are in the world that we're in right now. People are excited to go and leave and start their own thing, and they're doing it with $500. They're doing it online,
Totally.
all digital from
It's never been
home.
easier.
And it's never been easier to do. So you really have to make the case for people to want to be a part of something. And that's why, for me, especially now, my big focus is on purpose, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
my focus is on our purpose, I should say. So really, really, really drilling in on what is our purpose, and how can you as a team member be connected to that? What is the
Mm.
part that you play, right? And how can you
Yeah.
use your skills, not necessarily just the skills that I need, but how can you and your unique ability play a role in making us better, right? And I'm not going to give you the script, but the heart. So you take it from here and go.
You told me about working for your dad in high school, and remembering the initial spark of entrepreneurship that kind of gave you a sense, I am going to do more than my dad. And it was the GC driving up on the job. Could you retell that story?
Absolutely. One of the most memorable things about working with my dad was how hard he worked.
Mm-hmm.
Just without complaining, and a lot of times, you got, like, to paint the picture, you're working in a house with no windows and doors, no AC, and it's Florida in the summer, and it's just hot, and you're sweating, and you're wearing jeans because that's what you wear. You're wearing jeans, work boots, tool belt. You're in the attic. You're doing all that stuff, and you're just sweating your butt off. And my dad would just do that like it was nothing, nothing. And I
Yeah.
completely
No complaint.
didn't recognize it, right? No complaints. He just did it like it was nothing. And I'm, 14, 15 years old, whining about everything. But there was always one part about the work that my dad did that caught my attention. And it was the general contractor. When he showed up, the general contractor would drive up in his Range Rover. I'd see him pull up. He'd grab something from his trunk. And when he opened his trunk up, his golf clubs were in the back. And I thought, man, oh man, did he just come from playing golf? I wonder. And he'd walk up on the job site. He'd have a button down shirt. He'd have nice jeans on, not work jeans, and loafers. And he'd tiptoe his way through the sand in the front of the house and walk through, shake my dad's hand, have a couple quick conversations about what's going on, what he needs, how's it going, pointing at a couple things. Oh, this needs to be different here. This is going here. Oh, the homeowner's changing this, da, 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 da. And then he'd leave. And I spent a ton of my childhood wondering, where did he go? Where did he come from? Where did he go? Because my dad would spend 12 hours on this job site. But this guy came here for 45 minutes and went golfing or went to the next job. And that, in my head, that bounced around in my head for a long time until I realized what the truth was. And the truth was both. He was either going to another job site or he was going to the golf course because he was choosing to live the life that he wanted to live. And he was in that position. He wasn't he
Right.
wasn't the tradesman that was doing the work, which God bless the tradesman
Yeah.
doing the work. It was in a different position. And I thought to myself, I love my dad and I know what he would want for me. And that's what I'm going for
Hmm.
right there. I want to be a leader. I want to be a business owner. I want to be able
Yeah.
to still do and build great things, but I don't need to do it myself. I can still accomplish good things. I don't have to be the person who's doing it myself.
So you did end up going away, seeking higher education, the dream of every blue collar father. And at the time, your dad had already started his own company, VB Engineering. You
Mm-hmm.
didn't finish college. You came back, in fact, to do what I met you when you were working for your dad.
Yeah.
Did you imagine that you'd end up working for your dad at some point?
I felt like I would. I felt like a part of me was rebelling against that thought for a long time and
Yeah.
thinking, I'm not going to
Yeah.
do that. I'm going to do more. I'm going to do something else or whatever. And a part of me didn't and a part of me did. I would say
Hmm.
more of my consciousness and subconsciousness probably thought that I would. Um, yeah. So it was just a funny path to getting there, and I realized that, I am a
Yeah.
doer and I think that college is, I wouldn't ever say that it's not worth it, right? Because it is. But I just think that for some people, maybe it's just not for them. And I feel like that was me at that time because
Yeah.
I was in a
Hmm.
position where, I went to college and I worked. So there was a little bit of a balance there.
Right.
And you start to realize that you can make
Yeah.
money, and you can do a good job at something and, maybe you just don't need any more schooling kind of thing. So
Right.
I came back from the Northeast and, kind of didn't go anywhere in terms of job or entrepreneurship or anything like that. And then my dad asked me if I would help him out with a project. And I said yes. And then from there, the rest was history. And yes, it was a solar project. It was a big solar project. So that's kind of where the whole spark sort of came from.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks who observed how things unfolded for you, probably falsely as I did, assumed that you took over the family business and then just changed the name. Why don't you set the record straight for everybody?
Cool. Yeah, sure. Worked for my dad for three years. And went through a lot of stuff. And we had a project that was going on and it took us about 3 years to complete. And when the project came to an end, I was really excited about solar and I was researching what Solar City was doing in California and what other states were doing. And I was just seeing kind of what was happening. And I thought to myself, this is going to happen in Florida. It's going to happen here. We might just be a couple years behind. And I was really pitching my dad on going for it. Well, my dad was very comfortable in the electrical contracting space, rightfully so. I mean, he had a great thing going. It was really what he knew. And he had some really great clients that he worked for. And we didn't share the same vision, let's just say. And
Hmm.
so I decided that I was going to leave. And I sat my dad down at lunch and I said, I love you and I appreciate you. And I have to go do this because, I have to go do this. I have to go do this and I'm going to go do this. And so I started the process of, applying for my solar contractor license. And, as I was kind of going through that entire process, I got a random email from somebody on the West Coast of Florida who said, hey, I'm looking to sell my business. Do you know anybody that'd be interested? And I responded back and said, tell me about your business. And it was it was a solar company. And what he specialized in was maintaining off grid homes. And it all took place on this island off of, near Marco and Naples. The island was called Key Waden. And Key Waden is just a beach paradise. And it's completely off grid, but there are, multi-million dollar mansions that are
Yeah.
on that island of Key Waden on a couple acres each and that kind of stuff. And they were all powered by solar, battery backup, and, thousands of gallons of propane with, anywhere from 20 to 50 kilowatt generators. So it was this whole redundant
Yeah.
power system that was all managed using Outback. And the guy was very
Microgrids.
smart.
Yeah.
He, yeah, he was very smart and built all the systems the same. They were all Outback systems, which was great. So it was easy to
Wow.
maintain. And yeah, and that was the main business. It was getting on a boat because it was only accessible by boat.
Hmm.
It was getting on a boat, which was the work truck, driving over to Key Wade Island, which was about a 25-minute drive, going from house to house every week, checking the system, making sure everything was good. When the customer needed propane, boom, we do propane. When the generator needed an oil change, we did the oil change. When the solar, needed something, we did it. When the customer wanted to upgrade their batteries, we did it. And I did that for about a year. I drove from South Florida on the East Coast to the West Coast. Right after this was all happened right after I got married too, by the way. And I would drive over. I'd drive over for about 3-4 days. I'd stay in a Comfort Inn, and I'd go from the Comfort Inn to the dock. We'd go, I'd go out and do my work sometimes by myself. And I'd come back, sleep over. And the entire time I was really trying to build the business on the East Coast but I needed that business to just maintain my life.
Cash flow,
which was, prior to 4 kids, which was like just a dream. Anyway,
How did you afford to buy that business?
Great question. When I expressed interest, I went over and I met with the gentleman and I told him, hey, here's my situation. I don't have a lot to give you. I can't pay you the entire amount up front. Would you be willing to sell or finance? And he said, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so $60,000 seller finance with a $2,000 down payment, 5-year note. And I paid the entire balance off. On the 5th year, last payment, we sent in the last payment, every payment on time, which was amazing. And I sent him a bottle of wine as well too, to just, thank him for giving me that opportunity, because you don't get that very often. He was such an amazing person, such a good teacher and an amazing person, and just really gave me a great opportunity, which turned into this.
Yeah. That's super cool. It's a real Borrego Solar type story, turning a business that is focused on one thing, namely off-grid, into more of a household brand that's doing everything from residential to commercial, mostly grid-tied solar. That's really, really cool. I didn't know that story. Yeah. You said a few minutes ago that your focus is really on purpose. I want to get back to that. Unpack that for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. When I think back about why I started, we talk about the concept of grid parity, which is the cost of the grid electricity being equal to the cost of energy generated from solar. And the fact that number, that cost of energy generated from solar just continues to fall is what originally interested me in being in this business in the first place, because it just makes total sense for the homeowner and the business owner. And so for me, along the way, it's easy to lose sight of why you started, and you start to get caught up in what you're doing, and you can easily just kind of let the business run you run the business kind of thing. And over the last year or so, I've really taken a step back and reflected on the beginning stages of the business and a lot of the why. And really, because I want my team and myself and my people that are giving their lives to this company, I want them to realize that it's for more than just paying the bills or for more than just making profit for the company. There is more to what we're doing. There really is. Like we're a part of a movement that is installing, integrating low cost renewable energy, right? Not just in Florida, but we're a part of a movement that's happening all over the world, right? Whether it's a power plant or a 5 kW on somebody's house, we're all doing our part to offset the grid energy, whether we think it's dirty or we think it's expensive or we just don't like them. We're all doing our part. And I'm just really proud to be a part of that. And I want my team to know that they're a part of something greater than just the everyday that we're going through.
Yeah, we're really a part of a movement that's changing the way people electrify their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
that's empowering.
And more electricity is going to be required. If you look at what's going on, I mean, there's more. I mean, how many car companies are switching to electric cars, right? So just that alone is going to increase the electricity demand. So we have to do something. We have to
Yeah.
do our part. We have to do something, and we have to do it in a way that makes sense. We can't sell solar at a price that doesn't make sense. We have to sell solar to our customers at a price that really just continues to drive energy costs down, and does it
Yeah.
using a renewable source, a clean renewable
Hmm.
source, right? Distributed generation. The concept of distributed generation for me was another big reason why I wanted to start the business. I just loved that thought.
You mentioned electric cars. I'd love to hear, you are servicing businesses who no doubt have fleets. You're servicing homeowners who have individual interests. How is your business evolving beyond, Jigger Shaw has said, you're no longer a solar company, you're a virtual power plant company, right? Which is a nod to, and I just did an interview with Raghu at Enphase that you'll love, where he has said as well,
Mm.
you are a service provider, an energy service provider. With that lens, what are the services that you see Urban Solar evolving to offer homeowners and
Mm.
business owners in this new iteration of how the market dynamic is unfolding?
I think there's a tremendous opportunity for maintenance, and it's such a simple and obvious answer, but the reality of it is that I said it earlier, there's a lot of players that were in the market that are no longer here. And there's a lot
Yeah,
of homeowners and business owners and commercial properties that are just abandoned, and they have no
yeah,
idea if it's even working anymore, and they don't know who to call. And I think in order to really level up the integrity of the industry, we owe it to the industry to make sure that we do our part to to help keep those customers happy, whether they were our customer or
yeah,
not. And look, we do it as a business, and there's a cost to it, yes, and all that. But
yeah,
really, that to me is a huge opportunity, and I think that a part of that is going to come down to virtual monitoring and getting a little bit more granular with what we're able to see from our remote command center, and being able to use technology to get alerts, to alert customers, to dispatch teams faster and get things fixed
yeah,
and keep systems online as if we owned them,
yeah,
as if we owned them. We want the system working.
yeah. Is there any platform in particular that you are keen on? I know there are certain, like Omnidian is one. How are you thinking about the maintenance sort of technological stack?
Yeah. Yeah, we're actually very early on in this thought process, and we're really leaning into technology big time, and
Hmm.
so much so that we will likely be developing our own software for managing these types of things. And really, what we want to be able to do is, yes, maintain, but we also want to be able to enhance existing systems however we can. Some customers
Aha.
know that panel capacity is 2x, 3x what it was when they bought their panels. They might want to do a panel upgrade. Some customers
Yeah.
know that batteries are cheaper now than when they bought their system. They might want to do a battery upgrade. And so how do we engage in that conversation with those homeowners? How do we start that
Yeah.
conversation with them? How do we show them that it makes sense? And I think in a lot of the ways we do that, it's going to come from the data that we get
Yeah.
through managing their system, right? So very simply,
Yeah.
just watching their usage and seeing if we can see their consumption and their solar production, we can kind of tell, we can paint a pretty good picture of what's going on with them, and
Right.
start to give them options that might enhance, what they already have.
How have you funded the business so far? And I wonder, have you gone out and found financial partners to help you scale or grow? So often there's an unfair competitive advantage for some of the national footprint companies like Sonova and Sunrun, Blue Raven, and others that have gone and raised hundreds of millions of dollars, or they're a publicly traded company. How do you compete as a regional player?
For us, we've bootstrapped the majority of our time as a company.
Hmm.
Just cash flow business. We've been denied from every bank that there ever was. So we didn't really have any special financial advantages going through, our first, 9 years. On our
Uh-huh.
10th year, in our 10th year, just this past October, actually, just approaching our 10th year, we partnered up with a group out of Miami. Their name is Nextwell. And these guys, not only are these guys just some absolutely great people, brilliant people, but they come from the utility scale development space, and they do it on a global level, right? So they're in Japan, they're in Chile, they're in Spain, they're all over the place, and they're building these massive power plants. And they actually have a pretty rich history of how they sort of got to the Nextwell space, which comes from previous companies and those kinds of things. It's a really great story. They ended up building one of the biggest IPPs in the world. You know the story. Yeah. So
yeah. This is Andreas and the Sonetics team, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really amazing people.
Former Sonetics team. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a brilliant group of people. So the funny story is Andreas. So two of the principals of Nextwell at the time, they were with Sonetics. They were some of my first customers, and they were referrals through a friend here who lives in Boca.
I remember that you did the solar on Andreas's home.
Yep. They were referred to me by a friend.
You did Sean's home. That's how I met you.
Yep.
That's how I met you, was through Sean. I remember
exactly.
That.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
It's all coming back.
Exactly. So Sean referred me to both of those guys, and I ended up doing solar on both their houses. Andreas's was a great, clean installation. He took advantage of the FPL rebate. Good for you, Andres. That was super smart. Now we did a system on Pablo's house, who was his partner, and there was actually a failure on that system. There was actually a failure in the waterproofing, which led to a really nasty leak in his house. And his house was new construction, brand new. And I can only imagine what he was going through at that moment. And so we did what we do, which was we dispatched our team down there. We cleaned up everything that we possibly could. And then we filed an insurance claim, took it on the chin, and made sure that he was made whole, got the system reinstalled properly and everything like that. And now it's working perfectly fine, and it has been for 8 years. And that was 8 years ago. And we've always stayed in touch. And it was funny that he would always bring this up every once in a while and say, "Man, you did the right thing. You did the right thing for me.
Yeah.
You really did." And I think a lot. I always thought to myself, like, "Well,
I love the mannerisms too, because knowing him, he's Venezuelan businessman."
Yep. So he always said, "You did the right thing," and I thought to myself, "Well, we would have done it anyways." So no problem, And so we always stayed in touch, and then, we thought about putting the company on the market and maybe getting out or whatever when we were kind of at the height, a couple years ago, and I ended up just having some sort of mentor conversations with Pablo, and he said, "Hey, we'd like to maybe take a look at this," and I thought, "Okay, cool." And then from there, it went, we walked our way up to the altar, and then we finally decided to get married and partnered up, and it's been about 7 months now. And I'm really glad that we did do that. And I think that it was definitely a lifesaver for us as we're going through a really, really bad industry downturn.
Tough market turn, yeah.
Just a really tough market. A lot of fracturing going on in the marketplace all at once, and people were leaving. There was a great resignation kind of going on in our industry here, where people were just moving. They were just out. And we experienced a ton of it. There was a ton of it here, a lot of turbulence, a lot of stuff that I can attribute to our current culture at the time. And, we were just really fortunate and really blessed to have had those relationships. And we're very blessed to have been able to partner with them. And since partnering with them, we've increased our financial stability. We've been able to really start to explore things that maybe weren't really on the table for our company. And they've helped me look at the business through a much different lens, more like a kaleidoscope at this point. But a much different lens than what I was looking at it through, and, starting to see even further out, and really starting to plan, really starting to think long-term, and just be a better leader, truthfully. So I'm just thankful and blessed.
So is Urban Solar now a part of, is it a Nextwell Group business?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. Congratulations. I didn't realize that was the depth of integration there. That's big. I mean, that's big time, man. That's a really big move and step. And gosh, having been in this industry as long as I have, I can genuinely say there's one group, and I hope that Andreas actually listens to this, and not for this purpose alone. I don't pretend that Pablo and Andreas or listen. I know Sean does. Sean, thank you for introducing us. Literally, one group stands head and shoulders in my mind above all other developers I've ever had the privilege of meeting and working with, and that's Sonetics. And it's because of the they're all former AAS guys, with the exception of Pablo, who's just a savage businessman in general. Like he's such a great business person. While I was living in Miami, they really took me under their wing, and like you, feel like I was very fortunate to be mentored by them. But they had such incredible business acumen. Their vision into the Puerto Rico market, the Chile market, was second to none. The team and business they built, along with Lamberto Camacho, that now has turned into a really massive business in Europe, is a testament to the fact that they really understood the power of business. So it is. I think that I don't think very many people listening, if they're not in the utility market, can really truly understand the powerhouse. I mean, it's literally like next era level powerhouse of acumen that you have behind you in Nexwell. And it's interesting. We've talked a fair amount, and I didn't realize that it was Nexwell that's sort of now behind Urban. I would say, golly, look out those of your competitors in the Florida market, because I don't think any of them could be as well prepared at a market fundamentals level as the team that is behind you. Yeah.
Yeah. Super thankful. I mean, and it's great to have partners, right? And not just a checkbook, right? And that's just that's not what it is. We actually created a deal that was very participatory, to say the least, for both sides. And it's really so that we can thrive in this marketplace, and continue to get through what we're going through. But we really I see where we're going to get to in a very short amount of time. I mean, this industry in Florida is on its way to turn around, and we are absolutely going to be positioned to just kick butt, to say the least.
There's no question about it. Yeah, I think that what I'm hearing from you, you'll be one of the, if not the dominant player in the market. And I know that Andreas and the team wouldn't have it any other way. Was there any advice that you got along the way that, when you reflect back on it, really served as foundational insight for you? It gave you a fundamental sort of footing or shift in thinking about how to build a business?
A lot of the advice that I got was just tough feedback, right? Tough feedback about my leadership style, my thinking, my thought process, my mentality. There's just so many people that I honestly have to thank for giving me their time and their experience along the way. I mean, there's just so many people, and I'm not. This certainly isn't like a retirement speech, so I'm not there yet. But the overall theme of some of the greatest advice I've received, it's around reflection. It's looking at yourself. It's looking inward, and really not blaming anyone else first, right? It's really, how could I have done that better, right? What did I do to contribute to this? Where am I falling short? What can I do differently? And that is, I bring that one up because that's not one that you sit down at a lunch with a mentor and just absorb and change over the next day. At least that's not how it worked for me. That was a years long process of tapering reactions to things, to discovering more about myself, to reading, learning, developing, working with coaches, being open, curious. And I'm thankful to have been surrounded with people that didn't just tell me it was all about profit, right? They didn't just say, man, put yourself first. Put yourself first. Don't worry about anybody else and just take all the money and run. I don't think I ever got that advice. I always got the advice from people that was more, how can you be a better contributor to your team, to society, to the world? How can you grow as a person? And I've just always lived with that for my entire career.
Yeah.
That's just been it's become a part of who I am. If I'm not rapidly growing as a person and as a professional, then I feel misaligned with my calling, with my purpose. And so I'm always looking for those opportunities. And a lot of times you find them when you just stay curious. You don't have to ask anybody. Sometimes they're just right in front of you. And another quote I heard recently was, lessons are repeated until learned.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting one. And that one speaks a lot to my history, right? You feel like, why do I keep going through the same thing? And it's like, it's frustrating. And you just think, well, maybe I haven't really looked at this the right way. Maybe I haven't learned the lesson from this one yet, right?
What's your word of the year?
Impossible.
Impossible? Tell me more.
I'm inspired by the work of some great people in this lifetime. And a lot of them, in doing that work, were told that it wasn't able to be done. It's not possible. And I feel like on my scale, I hear that a lot. It's, I have to continually push people and remind them that there is a way to make it possible, that there is a way to do it. Like, look, we're launching rockets to, orbit and landing them back on Earth. I mean, that was never possible. Right. And yes, I'm reading the Elon Musk book, so I'm all full of Elon Musk stuff right now, but no, I mean, my word is impossible. And I think it speaks to mentality. I think it also speaks to my own thought process. Like, what's do I have an impossible goal for my business? And why not?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I have an impossible goal for my business? I should have one. And it should be one that I have no idea how to attain, because it's going to challenge me to think differently and maybe stop optimizing those things that I don't need. So impossible to me is like the word that gets me excited. If somebody says something's impossible, I'm like, perfect. That's what we're going to work on. Perfect. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah. I like that. Is there any particular thing, apart from the Elon Musk biography, that you have read and recommended often to others? Is there a book that you've read more than once, for example?
Yeah, I read Who Not How more than once, and I actually read it just this year more than once. That book, that book is so powerful. It's just so powerful. Just to speak on it a little bit, we are trained not to get help from people because we're told getting help is cheating or getting help is cutting a corner or something like that. But the book explains that when you sit in your mind and you think, how am I going to achieve that impossible goal? You're actually moving really slow. But when you switch your frame, when you shift your framework in your mind and you think, not how, who can help me achieve that impossible goal? You can connect yourself with an infinite amount of people that actually would probably be more than happy to help you because it's something that they're good at, that you're not good at. To me, that was massively inspiring, massively just exciting just to be able to think about that.
Yeah.
You got it on your shelf over there.
I do. Yeah. I was looking for it. It's actually upstairs by my bedside right now. The other one that is on my shelf, and I referenced this a fair amount, is 10x is easier than 2x. In fact, my mastermind group has been reading through that book, and it changes the way you orient your dreams, your goals, what's possible. Yeah.
Confidence is the byproduct of experience. That's another one that I heard just today, actually, and that was Benjamin Hardy who said that in his YouTube videos. Yeah, and it comes from 10x is easier than 2x, and it's just interesting to think that that's where the confidence comes from. And it's like, well, you said earlier too about failure. You're going to have to fail a little bit along the way to kind of get that confidence and get that experience.
That's right.
So just interesting.
Yeah,
I'm full of the quotes today.
It's a good life lesson for us as fathers too. Confidence comes from experience, and they don't get experience by being coddled and protected. Of course, we want them to
it's true.
not fall off the cliff and not cut off an arm. And ideally not break too many
Yeah.
bones. I told my wife, I said, I actually don't have a goal of like not breaking bones. I broke multiple bones, and you learn where your boundaries are and what your body's capable of. Is there a consistent habit or practice that you would say has given you the greatest impact or leverage in your life?
For me, it's been focusing on fitness.
Mm-hmm.
Consistently working out, getting the blood flowing and pushing my body
Yeah.
and just focusing on health, right? Just in
Mm-hmm.
general, for me, it's very simple, very straightforward. I don't do a special thing every morning when I wake up or anything
No.
like that. It's just making time to make sure I can step away from the day to day
Yeah.
and think about nothing.
Yeah.
And I do that when I'm squatting and it's heavy and I can't think about anything else. And it really
Yeah.
helps hit the reset button. That's why actually that consistent practice for me is I take my lunch break, if you want to call it a lunch break. I take my lunch break at the gym. I go to the gym. I get about a 45-minute workout in. I'm able to shower off at the gym. I come back to the office and I eat at my desk and I get right back to work. And it just helps me break up the day. And I do it a few times a week, and it helps me break up the day and just kind of cuts off whatever you started the day off with, whether it's good, bad, ugly, whatever, and just gives you sort of that fresh start. It gets you a little bit more centered, you know?
Mike, I'm encouraged and inspired that there are leaders in our industry like you, young, hungry, centered, productive. If folks want to get a little closer, they'd love to connect with you. How do you like to be found? Where's the best way to engage with you?
Find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there. You can find me on Instagram. And you can even email me.
What's your email?
Is it okay if I give my email address?
Sure, go for it.
It's mike@urbansolar.com. Really simple.
Fantastic. I want to give a quick shout out to our friend Anthony, who has been working with you, and who is himself an awesome, long time solar warrior. Thank you, Anthony, for connecting us. Anthony, I think, has been working with you guys to help build out your sales team, right?
Yeah, Anthony just came on full time a few months ago. Really, really happy to be working with him. He is not only a force, but he is a genuinely good human being.
Yeah,
I love being around him. He's full of energy, amazing person, great guy.
And he also has, among many other things and qualities and accomplishments over me, that he has had Tony Robbins on his podcast, which still, which he loves to remind me. So thank you for that, Anthony. Thank you. Thank you so much for making the connection. Michael, I want to end today with one simple question. What will have changed in the world, in your community, as a result of the work that you are doing every day?
I think there'll be a little bit more clean energy being used in homes and at businesses. But I think that people will be able to look back in a period of their lives that they spent at Urban Solar and say, man, I did something special. I made an impact on a customer's life. I learned about a really amazing industry and and worked with an amazing team. And I get to take that experience with me to the next place that I go.
Yeah.
And to me, that as well as just the way that, just the way that our branding comes across to somebody that's driving by our truck, right? It's even that little interaction, but really when we can truly enrich people's lives through Urban Solar, that to me is the impact that I desire to make on the industry, on the community, on the state, and just in general, and just be able to walk away just having made this thing, better than it was before we started, making people's lives, even better before they started here.
Well, today I would say you've accomplished the goal. I am better than I was before I started. I am grateful to know you, call you a friend and brother, and I'm thankful to finally have a chance to dig into your backstory and share it with our fellow solar warriors here on Suncast. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you. The pleasure was mine. Really a two-way street, Nico.
If you enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that you did, please share the love with Mike and his team. Go check them out on LinkedIn. Go to urbansolar.com and check out their fantastic branding and all the ways that they're changing the game for the community down in South Florida. And I would love it if you would take a moment to share with all those folks who are like you, listening on various podcast platforms or perhaps watching on YouTube. Leave us a quick rating and review. If you are watching on the web, you can easily do that at ratethispodcast.com/Suncast. And let us know how we can meet your needs better. Do you want more episodes like this about residential solar? Do you want more entrepreneurial stories? What is it that really gets you motivated to tune in and listen to more Suncast episodes? I'm grateful you've made it all the way to the end. That tells me that you, like me, are an infinite learner and you are looking to tune up your skills each and every week. Please tune in again as we do that on Tuesdays with the Tactical Tuesdays and Thursday episodes like this. Long, deep interviews with subject matter experts on the business side, the entrepreneurs that are leading on the front lines of the clean energy revolution. Finally, thanks to our sponsors who help make this possible. You pay attention, they pay all of the rest. They help underwrite this show. Please show them some love. Go to mysuncast.com/sponsor. That's how you can learn as well. Ways to partner with us to reach thousands of solar warriors and clean tech champions, just like they do each and every week. And remember, you are what you listen to. Thanks again for showing up. It is half the battle. See you next time, Solar Warrior.